All right, Los Angeles, LA's on fire again. We're not necessarily talking about wildfires today. We're talking about the political fires that are going on. This is the same city that watched the Palisades burn while the mayor was out of the country, knowing full and well what was going on. And now it has a reality TV star polling close enough that Donald Trump is publicly weighing an endorsement. Spencer Pratt, the guy America loved to hate on the Hills, is running for mayor for the second biggest city in the country. A recent debate effectively narrowed the race to two credible candidates. That's Pratt and Mayor Bass, with Pratt showing surprising message discipline for a political newcomer. He might actually win. Today on My Real Estate Show, we're breaking down the campaign nobody in Hollywood saw coming. We're going to talk about his marketing, all the things around that. I think that's important to talk about with real estate. We're going to be reacting to some of his viral reels and the marketing playbook that has Karen Bass basically. I think she's going to lose. So I'm just going to say that. I hope she loses at least. We're going to talk about Skid Row, a major form of his a major platform of his campaign, and it was an entire episode of True Crime and Real Estate, our other podcast that we do. So if you have access to that, I highly recommend listening to that. I mean, you should have access to it. I think we published that episode, right, Brian? So my point is, if you think this has nothing to do with real estate, you are not paying attention. The mayor of any major city controls zoning, permitting, rebuild timelines, insurance pressure, property taxes, basically the safety profile of every single neighborhood. So 16 months after the Palisades fire, the rebuild is still at a crawl and homeowners are still displaced. So that's real estate. That's your portfolio, and that is your client's net worth. Let's kick it off. Man, that was a terrible intro, but that's what happens when you go off script and have thoughts and feelings. So, Brian,
Right.
yeah, I know, right? I want Brian to just start off right away. Like, let's pull up the Bel Air ad. Bel Air. I didn't even have to say it like that, but.
Now this is a story all about how my life got turned upside down, and I had to take a minute to run for mayor. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air. In West Los Angeles, Palisades, in my backyard is where I spent most of my days, feeding hummingbirds, relaxing all cool, avoiding all the bums outside of the school. When a couple politicians who were up to no good started making trouble in my neighborhood, I got at one little fire. My mom got scared and said, "You're moving in with Harvey Levin in Bel Air." I pulled out from my lot about 7 or 8, and I yelled to the rubble, "Yo, ho, smell you later." I moved to my kingdom, I was finally there to sit on my throne as a prince of Bel Air.
So, leading lady of the bunch, i.e., Mom, thanks for watching, Mom. She says, I personally liked the ad. And I mean, I absolutely love this ad. But first of all, Josh, you and I haven't talked about Spencer Pratt running. So let's hear
No.
your thoughts.
I mean, I think it's interesting. Second biggest city in the country, and you have someone with no political background who is making a run at the mayor's office, which I don't care which side of the aisle you fall on. I think that's pretty impressive. And I think what's more impressive is the way that he has used his marketing to get a ton of support outside of the city, which is something you normally don't see in mayoral. Is that how you say it? Mayoral
Yep,
races.
mayoral.
Um, but what's weird is you're seeing so much
Sounds like a
pressure
dirty
from
word, though.
it does, yeah. They're getting so much pressure from outside of LA on this election, which I think is very interesting. And it's a mayor. Like it's a mayoral election, but it's turning into be like one of the biggest things politically we're talking about. So he's doing something right with attention.
I'm really excited because I knew he was going to be running, and I was like, good for him. You know, I love that he's pointing out the terrible things that happen. Another another agent on Million Dollar Listing Los Angeles, I was about to say like, oh, he's one of my favorites, and now I can't remember his name, but I'll remember it in a little bit. He went on, Fox News during the Palisades fires, just basically berating Karen Bass and saying, like, this is like absolutely disgusting. It was completely avoidable. Like, there were all the, like, I know as one of the leading agents in this community that there were plans that were brought forth and completely just disregarded. Right. And so I was glad that he did that because I know that there is a ton of Democratic pressure, obviously, the Hollywood elite, and they really just silence the shit out of any voice that wants to say, hold up, this is wrong, and it kind of does matter what side of the aisle you're on, unfortunately, when it comes to Los Angeles. It is extremely politically divided and it is extremely heavily left leaning to the point where they think, like the rest of the country, how could they possibly vote right? They don't even understand it because they just view the right as monsters. So I'm enjoying the refreshing content of this because he's pointing out a very huge problem. And I want to, we'll get into one of the other ads, but the one of the biggest problems he's pointing out is my house burned down, my family's home burned down, and we have nowhere to live. Okay? So that was the message, right? But then TMZ thought they'd be really, like, groundbreaking and report, "Oh, he doesn't actually live in this Airstream with his family. He lives in a hotel in Bel Air." Well, no shit. Like, if he can provide for his family, of course he's not gonna live in a fucking Airstream. He's gonna try and get his family into some reasonable accommodations, but he's proving a point that that's all he can do with his lot currently is have a camper on it. And so what are your thoughts there before we move on about like TMZ even trying to be like, "Well, what a liar. An elitist that's acting like he's hurting."
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny in the political game how, there's so much mudslinging. And if your side's the one doing it, it's okay. If the other side's doing it, it's not okay. I just think there's quite the, dichotomy there when it comes to politics that we don't see everywhere else. The interesting thing is, I've seen this move before, and I'm going to throw this one out there and I'll get your opinion on it. But we've seen this move almost identical with what happened with JD Vance. And very, very early on, JD Vance kind of became prominent around the whole disaster in Ohio with the train and the oil and all the spill and everything. That was really the Republican committee used that as leverage to get him in front of a national stage. Now, the interesting thing is we're seeing the same exact thing with Spencer Pratt. And the thing about it is we're seeing so much money pumped into a mayoral race. To me, that screams there's a longer term play here. I think this may be JD Vance's running mate.
Oh my god, that just gave me full chills. I'm here for it because he was such a villain, and don't get me wrong, like, I was not when I watched The Hills, I was not a Spencer Pratt fan, but what I think is very smart about that move is this guy clearly does not give a fuck what people think about him, and that is one of your biggest strengths when it comes to politics because these people will eat you alive. And so if you do find a personality like that, that's like, I don't care. I'm going to stand up for my convictions. I'm going to stand up for what I feel is right. That could be the most powerful thing.
I'm very interested to see how it shakes out. I think there's a lot of national implications on this, which I think is why we're seeing so much. But I think the national implications are he potentially becomes the mayor, but I think he's the running mate for JD Vance.
No matter what, it's a win. He got a ton of publicity out of this. He's gotten, a ton of eyeballs on him, a ton of backing. Like people are like, yeah, good for him for having, the gonads to stand up for his family, stand up for what's right. And I do like that he's like, this is my town and they're just letting this town rot and everything. And so before we go to the next video, I wanted to point out an Easter egg in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's video, and did anybody catch it? In the lyrics.
I don't think so.
I'm moving in with Harvey Levin in Bel-Air. So Harvey Levin is the owner of TMZ.
That's okay.
So TMZ being like, "Oh, well, like he's not living in his Airstream. We're gonna try and call his ass out." It's like, "All right, well, I'll move in with you then." I really liked that. I liked that he took that, turned it around, made his next ad, the platform for that. Brian, the ad that I would like to watch next is closer to his original ad. It's the one where he's like more serious, like, "Hey, I'm Spencer Pratt. This is where I live," which is the Airstream. And then I definitely wanna play the Lego one, of course, so hopefully you have that one queued. Oh, wow. I wonder which ones you did pull then. Well, I won't make Brian talk and try and find the ads at the same time, but I really do wanna know Brian's thoughts. Let's talk about how he's using AI content to make these ads. Let's talk about the marketing side of it, the real estate marketing side of it that realtors, real estate agents can use. So, um it says filmmaker is it Curran? Charlie Curran
I think so.
is pumping out videos that cast Pratt in cinematic hero scenarios, lightsaber duels with Bass, while Newsom and Kamala scheme in the background. Pratt as a Batman figure against a Joker style Bass. The posts have been viewed millions of times. Bass called the clips dangerous and accused his social media campaign of taking a violent turn. Never mind all these fucking people that burned in a fire.
Or the violence on your streets at night.
Yes, exactly. His social media is something we need to be concerned about. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to do.
Priorities.
They want to silence you if they're afraid they're going to lose. So, her complaints, it had what's that Streisand effect, Brian, that you talk about? Her complaints made him even more famous, made his ads even more famous, made them spread even faster. Every reshare from a critic, like Josh says, every reshare from a critic is free distribution. Every time somebody comments something hateful, it's like, thanks for the engagement. But let's talk about your haters, Josh, and how to twist that around a little bit and make it work in your favor.
I mean, I'm a firm believer in engaging with the trolls, but not in an argumentative way, but in a question and answer setting. So, for example, I get the trolls, I just start asking them questions, and they answer, and I ask them another question. I don't argue, but literally a lot of times you'll get 15, 16 different responses with the same person, and all it is just me asking random questions about what they said before. And most of the time they're, all about the keyboard. So they'll continue to come back and engage in everything. So that's my social media tip of the day. Engage with the trolls, but just don't argue with them. Just ask them questions.
Okay, but you don't just ask any question.
Yeah. I've kind of found a style of asking them to elaborate on things. So, add some more detail to that. What do you mean by that? Questions like that really kind of get them to, think about what they're talking about, because then they just keep going.
Yeah. All right, Brian. I don't know. We'll see.
Los Angeles doesn't have a homeless problem. We have a drug problem. The DEA will tell you that over 90% of the homeless population in LA
No,
are
I'll look it up, but you can keep playing this.
hardcore illicit drug users.
How many people are using illicit drugs in the homeless community? I would say it's incredibly high.
20%, 30%.
Of the overall problem?
Yeah.
Over 90%.
Cartels are operating in the open, forcing addicts to traffic drugs and murdering them when they don't meet their quota. Dogs are being killed by meth heads, and fentanyl addicts test their drugs on these innocent animals. None of my opponents are living in this reality, and all they want is more taxpayer-funded housing. You cannot fix a drug problem with more housing.
Spencer Pratt is exactly right. If I would have the easiest job in the world if all I had to do to treat drug addiction was put people in four walls.
Right,
Put them
right.
inside and they're cured. Oh my God, we're done here. That is an insanity.
Okay, do the next one.
This is where Mayor Vance lives. You notice something? Or here, where Nithya Raman's $3 million mansion sits. They don't have to live in the mess they've created where you live. This is where I live. They let my home burn down. I know what the consequences of failed leadership are. That's why I'm running for mayor, for my sons and the rest of us Angelinos that want to stop these corrupt politicians from destroying our city. We are going to get the golden age of Los Angeles back.
Yep, exactly. And then I'm trying to find his Lego one too, because it's amazing. And like the Batman and stuff one. Josh, carry us for a minute. This is
So
important.
I think it's interesting that I would love to know who is behind his campaign, because there's a lot of parallels between what he's doing and what we saw Trump do. And that's why I think there's a much bigger play for him. I don't think they'd be propping him up with this much if they weren't planning on leveraging it somehow. I mean, think about it from the standpoint of this could be one of those things where you take a conservative person, put him in a mayor of one of the most liberal cities in the country. It's kind of going to be the ultimate experience to see what's really going to happen.
Brian, go to YouTube and go to Everything is Awful, Spencer Pratt. So instead of Everything is Awesome, that's the Lego commercial. And it's amazing. And I've not even seen the Batman one that they're talking about either, but the Everything is Off. This is amazing. I'm going to shut up.
Everything is awful. Everything is hell when you're part of the scene. Karen Bass is awful and burning down our streets. Dirty needles, human waste. We just named two awful things: a stolen car, a burned down house. You know what's awful? Everything. Moms in shock, hit the locks. A camp of addicts down the block. Lots of tents, a very big mess. Awful scenes are not the best. Camps, traps, and crap, they're awful. Crack, smack, and shacks, they're awful. Slums and scum and bums, that's awful. Everything you see or smell or touch is awful. Karen, this is awful. Everything is hell when you're part of her scene. Everything is awful. And she's killing our dreams.
And you haven't seen that, Josh?
No, but it was good.
I mean, it's so creative, and it's like every person okay, so here is something that I find so epic about his marketing is the people of LA have been conditioned to accept these conditions. They have been told, like, this is just the way it is. You're going to have a 50 block area of tents and bums and drugs and human waste and violence and murder. Five deaths a day in Skid Row. 5 deaths a day. And so not take that and then also combine it with the wildfire bullshit, which was completely avoidable according to city planners. So these are 2 mistakes that city planners made that mayors have complete control over, not including the policy that can be recreated. And so these citizens have been conditioned to accept this. So for somebody to point out, hello, this is absolutely ridiculous. And, we watch that and we're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I mean, we know what goes on in LA, but like people had no idea that conditions were that bad because we live in real America. Whereas people in LA, they probably think it's that way everywhere. And this is just the way it is.
I will say, I moved from a liberal city on the West Coast,
Tell everybody the city.
Portland, Oregon. I moved from Portland, which keep Portland weird, we did not realize how bad Portland was. We knew it was bad. We didn't realize how bad it was till we went elsewhere and realized, like, how did we put up with that?
Mm-hmm.
But I truly believe people there, even if you think it's bad, you don't realize the extent of how bad it is until you get out and see what else is going on.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to say about his marketing that I think is absolutely genius is he has identified his target avatar phenomenally. And I think, look at everything, the Fresh Prince, the Lego, another one I saw, it's all targeting like my generation, going back, taking us like to the good old days of being a kid with the Fresh Prince, the Legos, like all of those type things. You get all these warm and fuzzy feelings about, it's like subliminally, it's like, hey, if you want those times back, you need to vote me in. And I think it's absolutely phenomenal. That's one thing that I think a lot of political candidates miss is defining who they need to get to vote for them. And they do this, shotgun approach. And I think he's been very, very smart to focus on who he needs to get the votes from to win the election.
That's incredibly insightful. And you're so right. I mean, I didn't even realize it down to the trying to draw out the nostalgia out of, and it very much is aimed at, you know, 30 to 45-year-old, that are like basically the millennials, right? I'm just like, wow, that is really mind blowing. And it makes me feel like a terrible marketer. I'm like, I need to go back to the drawing board because that is good. But Brian, can you look up Charlie Curran, Curran? I'm just curious because it says filmmaker Charlie Curran. He's the one pumping out these videos. So I'm curious. I don't know who that is, but I'm wondering, I don't know if you know who that is, Brian, but like, let's look him up and let's see who this guy is. And I wanted you to say what city you had moved away from because my mom also lived there for a short period of time and she moved away as well. It just wasn't her favorite place.
Yeah.
Wow, so he's not like anybody that we would know, really. Okay. I was just curious if it was somebody that we should know that we don't. And then Debbie Does Dallas Real Estate says, yes, that marketing is incredible, but beyond that, it isn't just the marketing play. He's not playing a game. So I think this is the other huge thing about millennials, right? We're over we're over these games. Like we're over fake. We're over we're also over the way it's always been done. Get the fuck out of the way, boomers. You have done enough damage. You set yourselves up really well. Congratulations. Now move because we took it for a long time and we're not taking it anymore. Like move out of the way so we can clean everything up.
Yeah.
I love that Donald Trump picked JD Vance as his running mate, who's younger than me. He's like your age, I think.
Yeah.
Younger than me. I can't believe there's a vice president that's younger than me. How old do you feel now, Mom? Younger than your daughter is the vice president. But when he picked somebody that age, it shows that he understands the generational gap as well and that things need to change because it was Brian that brought up this graphic and it was a day that you weren't here, but he brought up a graphic about, or no, it was a Glenda Baker reel. And she was saying, hey, boomers, they need to like basically get out of their houses and, free up inventory for the rest of us and everything. I get her point. I obviously disagree to a certain extent, but I get her point of what she's saying. Yeah, the boomers can't really help that they were a boom, right?
Yeah.
Gen Z aren't they like boomlets as well? So the Gen Z is another boomlet uh, generation as well. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. The accordion almost happening there.
Well, I like the whole point boomers get out of the way and free up some inventory.
No, and see that's the part. Like I agree with the sentiment, but it just pours into they also can't help that they're living longer.
Yeah.
And they're retiring later. And then it doesn't free up time for the millennials to get promoted properly, to get trained into their high level position. The boomer stays in as long as possible, they retire, and then all of a sudden nobody knows how to run the company. I think that may be part of the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah.
When I was on the Rock Island Arsenal, which is a Department of War facility for the Army, lots of civilians worked there. The average age of an employee there was 57. Average age. I'm like, you need to get some young blood in here. I'm
Well,
not condemning all baby boomers, Mom.
I think what's really interesting too is if this trend is really what you're saying, which I have never thought about it this way, but I agree with you. You know, the boomers living longer, staying in those jobs are stopping millennials from building their way up. I'm also a firm believer in personal responsibility, so I don't think millennials can use that as a crutch, but I
Yeah.
do think it does make it harder. I'll give them credit for that. But as that's happening, what's going to happen with the next generation? Because statistically speaking, every generation has been living longer. So is that gap going to be even intensified with, Gen Z?
Well, my mom made a really good point. First of all, Debbie says that she's a boomer, and I didn't even think of her like that. She's like, I obviously she's like, my mindset is more aligned with X's and millennials, but Debbie, I always pictured you as a Gen Xer. I didn't even know you were of the boomer generation. But my mom said she made a very good point that I think you'll appreciate. We do have wisdom that you can't get from books or AI. And then she also said it needs to be a blend. And I agree, there does need to be a happy medium consistency.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that can be learned from the older generation. And I think that's one thing that millennials sometimes have a problem with is being willing to listen because they're like, we want to do it our own way, which is fine. But it's like you can take some stuff that they learned and might save you some time. So I think that's one place where the millennial generation struggles. But I also think part of the problem is the boomer generation is very much like, well, the younger generation isn't going to listen to me, so I'm just going to keep it all to myself.
Yeah.
So I think personally that both
You gatekeep a lot. Boomers gatekeep, Mom.
yeah, and collaboration is more of a millennial thing.
It is.
I truly think that ultimately we need to have a generational roundtable and work this stuff out because I think there's much better ways to do stuff. I don't think, forcing boomers out of their home is probably the best option. But at the same time, what I don't get is we have some of these boomers that have their homes are paid off.
And they
100%
own
paid off.
several homes. So they use
Yeah.
that equity to outbid. That's what I was saying about that video is I was explaining to Brian, they'll use the equity from this home to outbid these Generation Z or millennials. They take the equity out to cash outbid to have another property.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying government regulation is the answer for that, but like, what is the answer? That's very selfish.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it too is, because that's going on, I think it's a mindset thing because the boomer generation, they're very hardworking. But I think they also learn they have this like, I'm not going to say this right, so don't be offended. Not you, but anybody listening, don't be offended. But they have almost like a hoarder mentality of, like, hey, I need to buy more houses. I need to do this, that, and the other thing.
Opportunity might not come around again or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And good on them for being in a place financially where they can leverage that and build wealth and everything. My thing is, if I'm in the millennial generation, when I make it to where the boomers are now, my thing is I'm going to go like sell everything I got and go live on a beach somewhere with a Mai Tai. I don't need, once I get to the point to where I can make it the rest of my days like that, I don't need to be continuing buying houses and doing all this. And a lot of the boomers, it's like, take advantage of it. You know, they have these homes that, but it's like, they're not doing anything with it. They're not enjoying it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm seeing too, my dad now is at retirement age, but he's still working. And what I'm seeing is a lot of these like boomer retirement, they're never retiring. They're so into the identity of what their job was, and that's how they find value, that they never want to retire, even if they have the means to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's just generationally, they're a very hardworking, proud generation. But a lot of them are now retiring at 75, 80. They just keep working because they don't, not because they have to, because
Exactly.
financially they're in a position where they
Which
could
is
retire.
selfish.
They just want to, that's how they identify. And that's how,
Go work somewhere else, like start a company, go volunteer, go do something, like please make room for the up and coming generation to have their moment, to have that wealth building. They're taking our wealth building years away.
yeah. I forget what company it was, but it was a really cool idea. It's a smaller company. They were in like the tech space, but they were basically pairing, because they were seeing this thing too, where they had this age gap. You know, they had the boomers and then the millennials and really nobody in between. So what they started doing is they started pairing a boomer with a millennial to work together.
Love it.
And the CEO of the company was basically saying, we have had better morale at the company. People get along a lot better.
They probably understand each other more after
And
that.
he said the biggest thing is we get work done better. We're more efficient, because he's like, I have some boomers that know product and know this, that, and the other thing really well, but they don't understand like the new technology. And so he's like, I pair them with a millennial who gets that. And now you have, you know, pros and cons working together, strengths and weaknesses working together. So I think that's really where, you know, I think as a real estate industry, we can look at that too, because look at the average age of an agent right now. And so
What is the average age? I mean, it's old, right?
last time I looked, which was a couple of years ago, it was like 57.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that was a stat from NAR, I think in like 23, 24-ish. But it did mention specifically that age is every year continuing to go up.
Okay, the average age is 56. Thank you, Debbie. So very close, Josh. You get the candy bar. A couple of things in my notes here before we wrap it up. I want to like go down the line on some of the things about the Spencer Pratt mayoral thing, because I know we got a little off task. However, this was like a really fun episode. So the marketing breakdown. Pratt is doing 4 things that almost no candidate at a local level does well. He picks one villain and stays on her. Every reel, every clip, every joke points back at Karen Bass. Repetition is the engine of recognition. And I know this from like the Donald Trump days, when he would just keep saying, and he still does, the failing New York Times over and over. And it's like, I don't even know. Are they failing? Like, you assign it that nickname enough times, right? 2, he produces in volume. AI tools let his team produce dramatic visuals, alternate versions, and rapid response attack content in hours instead of weeks. So just like that moving in with Harvey Levin and Bel Air, that was a quick response that people are like, oh, like they're all here for it. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
now they're leaning at the edge of their seats. They want to, what's his next move going to be? 3, he uses the parody and pop culture references. It's pretty much what you talked about. They already live rent free in our heads. Batman, Star Wars, and by the way, Brian, like, you don't feel pressure right now pulling those up, but like I can't wait to watch those too. He's not asking voters to learn his message. He's plugging his message into stories that they're already familiar with. And then 4, he stays in character. He's the angry, displaced Angelino who lost his house. That's his brand. And that is one of the biggest lessons that I think real estate agents should take from this marketing is if your identity is all over the place, people don't trust you. They don't know where they stand with you. They don't know what they're getting with you. If you come out tomorrow and you're like feeling good because you just got out of church and so you're on your best behavior, you're dressed a completely different way. Like Natalie Dawson is somebody that I follow. I'm just fascinated with her. She's a CEO. She does YouTube videos and stuff, and I follow her. And every time you see her, her nails are painted black. She always wears black, maybe a little bit of white, but she never wears color. And she said it's because I didn't want to have to worry about what am I going to wear today. I know I look good in black. I know it's consistent. And so she just made the decision, I think 5 years ago, she said, I wear black, maybe some white, like a white shirt under a black blazer or whatever. But she's like, you won't see me in color. You won't see my nails a different color every day. I'm not saying I'm going to be like that, but it's an interesting concept. People know when they see you, you're going to be polished. You're going to look a certain way. So figure out your identity and stick to it. So before I move to the Skid Row side of it, do you have anything to add to that, Josh or Brian or anybody?
I would only say when it comes to the marketing thing, the biggest takeaway I see is we have a gubernatorial candidate that's doing things that have never been done before. So don't be afraid as a real estate agent. Do things that have never been done before. Don't just make the same video walkthroughs. Don't just do all the same, vlog style videos. Change it up. Be different because that's what's going to capture people's attention. And especially, I think, in a lead generation setting, you're going to get a lot more leads if once you identify yourself and who you are, identify, and don't be afraid to step outside of the normal traditional real estate media, marketing, offers, all that type of stuff.
Yes. And when you see something that's working and people respond to it, don't keep trying all this random other shit. Like lean into that style, especially if you like doing it. But when people are responsive to it, lean in harder. And if they're not responsive to it, then maybe what you've got, that one particular thing you've got going on ain't working. So Skid Row and the facts people are tired of. Karen Bass promised to end street homelessness in Los Angeles by 2026. I don't know. Let me look at the watch here. It is 2026. Street homelessness is down, to her credit, 17.6%, but that ain't 100%. She promised 100%. She delivered less than a fifth of that. CNN pushed her on this 2 days ago, and her answer was that she did not anticipate the bureaucratic barriers. She's the mayor. She is the bureaucracy. LA County has a homeless population estimated around 75,000. That's among the largest of any county in the nation, obviously. That's the size of a small American city living in tents, RVs, and doorways. According to the latest official count, 43,695, that like almost sounds like the square feet area of an acre. 43,695 people remain homeless in the city of Los Angeles, including nearly 27,000 citizens living straight up on the streets, not like homeless in a shelter. A federal judge has been questioning Bass and other elected leaders after an independent audit found accounting issues with the $2.5 billion given to Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. $2.5 billion with a B. These books are not adding up. But yet there's like bureaucratic red tape. Okay. Skid Row has over 4,000 residents and a crime rate of roughly 68.4% higher than the national average. That's insane. Downtown LA and Skid Row see crime rates exceeding 9,000 incidents per 100,000 residents. So that's, what is that percentage-wise? Like 9%.
Well, you make me think I should know numbers like I'm a real estate agent.
9,000 per 100,000. Like that's 9%, right?
I think so. Yeah, sounds about right.
So, like, I walk out the door, I have a 1 in 10 chance of having a violent crime happen to me. That's fucking scary. Meth-related overdose deaths in LA are up more than 1,000%, up more than 1,000% from 2008 with Skid Row at the epicenter. Roughly 9.9% of Skid Row population in the US is, listen to this, roughly 9.9% of the Skid Row population in the US is military veterans. Do you know what the percentage is of military veterans in the United States?
I don't.
It's 1%.
Okay.
You know, like, just as a veteran, that one just very much shocked me. So the LA Animal Services Department said it was told by the Office of Care and Bass not to enforce animal laws in Skid Row, which is why animals there are not spayed, neutered, vaccinated, chipped, or registered. So the animals are unprotected and the residents are too, i.e. like rabies and everything like that. That's freaky. And when the Pacific Palisades and what is that town? Altadena? Altadena? I've never heard of
Altadena, I think.
Altadena. When the Pacific Palisades and Altadena burned, the mayor was in Ghana. The Palisades Reservoir was empty. The fire hydrants ran dry and the neighborhood burned. Just to bring it back to real estate at the end, voters who own homes in LA, they're watching their property values tied directly to this, like the results of this election. Permits, rebuild timelines, public safety, encampment policy, and zoning all flow from City Hall. Whoever wins, and the vote is on June 2nd, by the way. I feel like we should have a watch party or something. Whoever wins on June 2nd is shaping the largest residential market in California for the next 4 years. So I think we should pay attention to it. The race is not entertainment. It has been entertaining, but it has, very real consequences. So thank you for watching. Thank you for everybody who participated in the chat. This was such a fun episode. And we'll see you next week, 12 Central.
See you guys next week.